these root hashes are basically things that can be connected to by the other blockchains of other theoretical cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin itself. But also, Bitcoin itself could be split up into multiple branches. Now, this also has positive and negative sides. The positive side is we'll need a lot less storage space to store the Bitcoin blockchain, because right now that's going to become a problem sometime. We don't know when, but it is a growing problem. Let's just keep it at that. And with tree chains, we'll have at least the possibility to split off part of the Bitcoin branches, for example, per region on Earth or whatever you like, which makes it possible for these branches to be stored in certain places or cloned and copied, but not the whole blockchain continuously, indefinitely. It will become faster. It has a lot of positive incentives for miners because they can mine multiple branches, and it increases the hashing power. So it's an interesting solution. I wonder if it would ever be implemented. I would love to see it being implemented in an altcoin at least to try it out first. And if positive, who knows, maybe Bitcoin would undergo a big transformation in the future.
So is it possible then that one of the branches, because it's unprofitable to mine, just dies?
It won't die because it will be hooked to the Bitcoin root branch. But instead of dying, it will become more or less dormant or slow going. Mm-hmm. And so if that happens and the branch represents a cryptocurrency and it's worth absolutely nothing, nobody will mine it. But if it's still worth something, miners have a big incentive to still point their hashing power at it. So we envision a method which is basically called swarm or haystack. Swarm is more the idea about it because there's already something called swarm. But what we're doing is we're trying to make it possible to have people do more or less Hawala transactions between blockchains, but also value systems or ledgerless systems, using a method called the haystack method. And what we do is we create a transaction that is given out to a swarm, and that swarm acts as one actor. And this swarm contains two main actors that are like Hawala traders, and they do the trade for you. But because the swarm is a randomly chosen swarm out of a very big network, it's very, very difficult to try and control one single swarm. So it basically creates honorable actors in a trustless network. And these honorable actors can mitigate an exchange between value systems.
So those actors then decide if the transaction is valid or not?
Yeah, the actors decide if the transaction is valid on both sides, from Alice to Bob and Bob to Alice.
Will it use garlic routing?
We want to build it in such a way that we can do it over onion routing, garlic routing, or GNU net routing, which means that what is commonly referred to as the dark nets, or decentralized networks, are used for doing the communications. I think that's also a good idea when looking at the anonymity of the transaction, because if you just do this in the plane or even with encrypted connections from peer to peer, these peers can still be measured and their traffic can be measured. This is also a problem that Tor itself has. And why do we want to make this an anonymous system? Because then it's much more difficult to tamper with. Because what we really want is that these theoretical swarm actors are trustworthy. And if it's possible to start doing metrics on the entire network, and organizations like NSA or GCHQ have more than enough computing power to do this, then these metrics can be abused also to influence the network, and that is not good for a decentralized mining system. So Bitcoin itself already has some of these mechanisms internalized as well, but Bitcoin is very measurable, and as such could be a risk in the future for people wanting to do anonymous transactions or trying to build an open financial network. Because Bitcoin falls under the same premise as Hawala. But first, I will go to some of the challenges that we face when we want to implement this. Because we'll have all these nodes on a decentralized network. So how will you know that nodes will do what you want them to do? Or that they're going to fake the data and try and inject and insert fake data into the decentralized network? Now, that's very difficult to know, because we're not working with a blockchain that just keeps on growing. Internet of Coins model is based on something called a FIFO chain, which means that you get new data in and old data is eventually pushed out. Otherwise, we'll have yet another blockchain to save on our hard drives and yet another growing system. So FIFO chains are being proven to work.
You mean first in, first out or something? Or?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the systems that we know in this is called BitMessage. BitMessage has a FIFO chain that forgets the data in about 48 hours. It kind of stretches and grows and shrinks a bit because the network sometimes has nodes leaving or nodes entering. But generally, it's about that time. Now, BitMessage does another interesting thing. It works in streams. And so we're looking at if that's something that we could implement for a decentralized value exchange, but we don't know that yet. But we will have problems with reputation handling. So nodes could be subject to civil attack. And we're looking now at ways to mathematically be able to define whether it's something that's happening under civil attack or that a real transaction is taking place. There's also a problem of deduplication in the network. So we need to make sure that a swarm, if a certain part of the swarm leaves the swarm or just falls offline, or half the swarm falls offline, let's say half of the swarm is in Egypt and they decide to cut the lines like they once did, right? Then that's a problem. And if a transaction is underway at that moment, the transaction could become sabotage, maybe unintentionally, but it could become sabotage. So we're also looking at how many times can a swarm be duplicated, or are there methods of encryption like threshold encryption to make sure that even if part of the swarm is still there, the transaction can still be completed. We're looking at the challenge of making the transactions reversible, like what they're doing with atomic transactions, because I think that's just generally a very good way to go about this system. If something in the transaction goes wrong, there should be a catchback through which the actors get their money or value back, so it doesn't just disappear in the network somewhere. And then we have the challenge of blockchain differences. If you look, for example, at the structure of NXT, which is a younger cryptocurrency than Bitcoin, and you see there's a very, very big difference in its makeup, in its code, and also in the language it speaks to its RPC ports. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but mostly that comes to creating adapters that fit on top of these cryptocurrencies that make them speak a common standard language. So then back to the Hawala system. I think there's that we can see a lot of similarities between Hawala and the cryptosphere. First of all, Hawala uses a decentralized ledger. It actually uses many decentralized ledgers. Currently, our cryptosphere uses many decentralized ledgers. All these cryptocurrencies have their own ledger. It's also exceedingly resilient and difficult to stop. So Hawala works even when there's no legal system in a country, like Congo or other places where it's difficult to live. And the same with Bitcoin. As long as you have something that it can piggyback on, in this case, Hawala piggybacks on honorable networks of people, and Bitcoin piggybacks on the internet, which is a network that's kept up by all these sysadmins who go to their jobs every day and try and do the right thing to keep this network running, right? That sounds pretty honorable. And it also enables value transfer in a decentralized system. Bitcoin and Hawala do this. They piggyback on top of other infrastructures, and they utilize network fees to keep their system operating. Both systems can move great amounts of value only by sending and receiving data. So Hawala brokers never have to send money to one another. They do all this by ledger, and they just have a little bit of a stack that they can give to other people. It comes in and it goes out. So that's very interesting. Basically, what we have with all these cryptocurrencies is a digital hawala. Now, let's hope that does not become illegalized, but if we want to make sure that it does not become illegalized, I think we have a big job to do. That's trying to work together and not just compete amongst one another, but create something that creates a network that becomes really an internet of coins. And that's why I often say the internet of coins is not something that is my thing. It's not something that I can own or that I can build up for myself. It's something that is a common community effort, and that everybody needs to become part of, to work together to create a real internet of coins. So here I still have this picture of Bush thinking about it, because he was one of the guys that did big crackdowns on hawala networks. He's no longer in office, perhaps luckily, because we might have had some big crackdowns on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But there are other people that also, like him, do not understand what this is all about. And it's up to us to communicate this in a frank and correct way and show that what we're doing is no more or less than hawala, but then digitally. And that what we're doing is meant to be open, it's meant to be legal, it's meant to help others. It's meant to make the world a better place. End of file. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, go ahead.
I have a question on the trust part of these swarm members. So these swarm members are, how are they backed? First off, who's creating these swarm members?
Everybody that takes part in the network can be chosen to be part of a swarm at any one moment.
And how is reliability or trust from that member being determined?
Well, right now we don't have a good method for that yet, so that's what we're still researching.
Right.
But right now we have two types of participants in the network mainly, which is you have people that want to just trade one currency for another, which are basically users or clients. And we also have a participant that can be a user or client, but he also wants to be an allocator. So he said, I have some Bitcoins, I have some Next coins, and I want to make them available for hawala transfers, as it were. Any user can do that. Anybody can become their own exchange, as it were. But they don't have to market their exchange like most exchanges have to do. Basically, they just park the funds, and then the network automatically chooses them at occasional times for a transaction. And by parking their funds, they can get mainly like an interest, like keeping it on the bank. But their amount of Bitcoins and Next coins will fluctuate up and down. So it depends on people that want to do this, and that say, well, I have some stacks of coins that I'm not using anymore or doing nothing with. I don't mind to just let them be there. And with every transaction, they get a little bit of a network fee, just like miners. And also they're encouraged to support complete blockchains, to have those on their computer systems, so that they're actually actively supporting the networks of the cryptocurrencies themselves, because that is going to be another big problem in the future. The hashing power. It's already going down, and, well, the end is not in sight. So that. It's a big problem, and Nicolas Courtois has often also spoken on this. He's quite hardline about being very critical about Bitcoin's cryptographic implementations. I partially agree with the fact that Bitcoin does have its weaknesses, but it also depends on how Bitcoin's users are going to treat Bitcoin itself. If we all just say, we don't care, we'll have all our wallets on blockchain.info, we're not really supporting the network. We're basically just using it for our own gain, but it's not actually actively supporting it. While if you actually run your own blockchain on your own computer, while it's still possible, you're actively supporting the network. So I think that's something we also want to encourage with Internet of Coins. When we bring out the hybrid client, we want to make sure that the hybrid client can automatically pull in complete cryptocurrency stacks with their blockchain and set them up automatically. So that's
Still a general question to this Valhalla system. I think it only works when there's always like some kind of balance between pay-ins and payouts.
You mean like there has to be an order board or ask and bids?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we need to have some kind of sufficient amount of users that do transfers in both directions.
Yeah, yeah.
Because when everybody's just exchanging dollars for euros and no one is changing back, then it would
Yeah,
make the trader bankrupt at some point because he has this small stack, it's depleting.
Yeah, yeah.
How is this problem solved in coins?
In our system, we want to make it as follows: that when you're an allocator for a cryptocurrency, let's say I'm a fan of Flappy Coin, and I have also some Bitcoins. Now, I know for a fact there's at the moment not many fans of Flappy Coins anymore. Some bad things happen to our little Flappy, right? I was an avid fan of Flappy Coin because I thought the bird was so cute.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a big fan of Flappy Coin, and I have a really big stack of Flappy Coins, of course, because I'm left holding the bag, right?
Okay.
So what will I do with the bag? Well, I can just let it be the bag, but that's kind of sad. Nothing's going to happen. But maybe I could also say, well, maybe I will organize a garage sale, and I'll say to everybody, you can pay with Flappy Coins. And I will be the only allocator in the network. So I put my Flappy Coins up for allocation, I put my Bitcoins up for allocation, but that means if you have only one allocator, you already have enough to have a transaction take place, because an allocator cannot be the master of the transaction. That is the randomly chosen swarm. But the allocator just has to keep to the rules of the transaction itself. So for example, somebody else, if he wants to buy Flappy, in this case will always end up with me being the allocator. This means also that small and dying coins there's an incentive there to still support them. So they will get the most chance that they can get in this network system. Because if there's only one person that still likes the coin, it's still tradable if he wants to allocate them. However, if there's a lot of people that are fan of a coin, like let's say there's a lot more fans of Litecoin, and they all are allocators, then somebody is randomly selected in the network to allocate for a transaction. So eventually, being an allocator for a certain cryptocurrency balances out, because if there's a huge amount of allocator for Litecoins, many other allocators will be like, I don't want to be an allocator for Litecoin because it doesn't earn much, right? Because the earnings go down. And so they'll choose a smaller cryptocurrency to support that. And then we can really see in a big showdown what's going to happen to the cryptocurrencies that are really absolutely shit coins. Because there are shit coins, let's be frank. These coins, even if they have only one person that really likes them, wants to support them, can survive. But if not, they will crash. Of course, there's also this hashing issue. So I think if there's only actually one person who supports it, the coin will go down. But it does go to show that statistically, there's a way that this arrangement is done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
More than. Okay. Yeah.
Is it only for coins or?
In first instance, we're building it for cryptocurrency coins, but we would like to integrate systems like open transactions because we also want to go ledgerless. That there are certain before Bitcoin, there were many other alternative economy ideas, and some of these are still running. Like in Amsterdam, for example, we have an alternative currency called the makkie that can be used. And in Rotterdam, we have something called the dam. Or it's the other way around, I don't know exactly. Anyway, they have these two names. And then there's...
Further on in this building, they accept dollars.
Dollars, okay,
Yes.
yeah. And these are offline currencies that could be integrated. For example, if I buy 1,000 makkies, I take a camera, I put them on the makkies, I burn them in a bucket. And I have people that actually know that it's real makkies. They are standing there and say, yeah, that's real makkies, I'm really sad. I recreate them digitally. Suddenly you have a window to the makkii financial system that can be used for transferring makkies. And if anybody wants to be a broker for makkii coins, he can become one. And so in this way the Internet of Coins can go much further. Just like the internet went much further for communication, I think we should go much further for exchange of value than we have done in the past. And Hawala also shows us, in that sense, a good a lesson in history. Like, how can this be done? How can this be made resilient? But now we can digitalize this and make this much bigger. So I really hope that happens, because I would think it would be really fun. You can get a lot of groups that have their, for example, Greenpeace could have their own currency and say, okay, if you want to support us with green coins, then they can do that. And I think it would be very interesting to see different groups creating different currencies.
How does this compare to the Ripple network? Because they have a lot of similar goals, I think, also with enabling all kinds of transactions between all kinds of different assets, both cryptocurrency and non-cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Well, this compares in the sense that the goals are the same, but there's a difference. The Ripple network is federated when it comes down to it, and what we want Internet of Coins to be is completely decentralized like Bitcoin itself. So
Could they exist next to each other?
absolutely, and we actually hope that Ripple will be integrated also as a brokerage system, so that you can also change from Bitcoin to Ripple, or from Muckies to Ripples, or the idea is that you can create hybrid assets on the network. That means you could, for example, say I want an asset that has its value denominated in Ripples, in Bitcoins, in Muckies, in Flappy coins, and then this asset can be tradable for all those types of currency. So, Ripple we definitely want to see integrated as well in the future, and Stellar. Because I think in the end, all these systems can start, it's like, they can start giving each other support. So right now we've seen a lot of competition, and we'll probably still see a lot of competition. But I would also like to see collaboration, because I think that's going to bring us to the next level.